Welcome everybody to the Tomorrow Bio Case Reviews 2023. Good morning to some of you, good afternoon, or maybe even good night. Some people said that they're joining from areas where it's like the middle of the night. Today, we're going to walk you through all the details of the cases that we've done last year with a quick introduction presentation, and then leave ample of time to do Q&A after. I'm Emil, founder and CEO of Tomorrow.
I'm Rishi, I'm a medical researcher and SST team lead here at Tomorrow Bio.
Awesome. We're going to walk you through everything and then answer all of your questions. Some of the questions we might need to answer pretty quickly because there's a tremendous amount of questions, and not to go like for many, many hours. It might be quick answers. If there's something that we're missing during the Q&A, please just put it into new questions and then just upvote it as much as possible if there's anything that we might have missed, and we're trying to get through everything. But now, as I said, quick introduction presentations, especially for those of you who do not know us. If you think about Tomorrow, there's practically speaking two organizations that make up the Tomorrow Bio network, so to speak. There's Tomorrow Bio, which is the day-to-day organizations. You do a cryopreservation contract with us, we help you with with the funding options and so on. So 99% of the time, you're going to deal with Tomorrow Bio. We're also the organization that does all the SST work, that does the cryoprotection and so on and so on. And we do a lot of, on the R&D side, we do a lot of medical development and translational research. On the other side, hopefully, you're not going to be at least related to or have nothing to do with that organization for a very long time. There's the European Biostasis Foundation that does the long-term storage and all the money management stuff for long-term cryostasis care, cryostasis storage in Switzerland. Apart from this long-term storage, it's also a non-profit research organization that funds and conducts research from basic science to applied science. And again, this is mostly for the people who do not know us. Quick overview of who we are and how everything looks. So this is one of our operation rooms in Switzerland. On the left, you see our CT scanner. So we do CTs for all of our cases for quality assurance. You're going to see some of those CT scans later in the presentation when we run you through the cases. We're not only, of course, localized. We're not doing only cases localized, but our standard case procedure is in fact whole body field cryoprotection. So everything is done in the field. This is one of our ambulances. By now we have multiple of those. These are the two ones that are based here in Berlin right now. We just bought a third one. So now we have 3 fully equipped biostasis ambulances, which are basically medical operating rooms, mobile operating rooms, where you can do the whole cryoprotection procedure inside of these ambulances. Most of it is currently in Europe, and very soon, for those of you who might join us from the US, very soon we're going to announce our launch in the US, which of course we've been talking about for quite some while, but now pretty much everything is figured out. Coming soon, New York and California being the first 2 areas where we will have teams and coverage as well. Inside these ambulances are stuffed full with part custom built, part medical technology that we buy from hospital suppliers to do field, as I said, whole body field cryoprotection. This is another view of our operation room in Switzerland. In Switzerland, we have this full facility that we've built. To my knowledge, it was the first purpose-built facility for cryopreservation. Now, technically, there's also one in Australia with everything that you need, like lab space, engineering space, medical facility that you just saw, operation rooms, and office. Some of you might have met us there already. We do conferences and workshops there to kind of bring the scientific community together. There's going to be one in October this year again, going to be announced soon, so stay tuned for that. And of course, very importantly for the topic today, it's our long-term storage location as well. In fact, you can't see the part where the long-term storage is because it's underground behind the building, which arguably under certain circumstances might give some extra layer of protection, but in most cases, in most cases, it's probably not needed in Switzerland, as it's being a very, very safe and secure country. Nevertheless, there was the small hill on the plot that we bought, so it was a natural choice to just put it into the small hill to have underground storage. Lab space as well, as I said, we're not only doing cryopreservation procedures, but a very, very strong focus of both Tomorrow Bio and all the other organizations, European Biostasis Foundation, for example, is very much research. Not only alone, but as part of a large research network of multiple organizations, facilities, now also starting with some new organizations. And last but not least, then of course there's long-term storage. Long-term storage here means cryopreservation storage in immersion dewars so far, and soon we will add whole body ITS dewars. They're currently in development, and hopefully within the next couple of months they're going to be added. But today it's not about how everything looks and what we do in general, but it's about cases, like the case reviews that we've done, or the reviews of those cases that we've done in 2023. Before we dip into the actual case data, let me give you a bit of an overview of how we generally think about case reviews, how we think about quality improvement, and so on and so on. So, first of all, case reviews we deem to be a really, really important thing, both for internal, accountability, for external accountability, and then of course also as part of the research progress and process, where you write down, you check all the data, you make sure the data is well preserved, and of course most importantly that you learn from cases to then over time get better and better in quality. In our mind, every organization should do a case review of every case, and not just here we did this case, but literally quality data, what was done, and so on and so on. And on our side, we will do a case review mostly focus on quality data for every case that we're going to do. We're going to release them at least once per year. The reason why we do it yearly, or at least initially we do it yearly, because case reviews, it's a good amount of work, it's a lot of work, and it's technically important but not urgent work, right? Like there's usually cryopreservation cases and so on. Improving technology arguably is important and urgent, whereas once you've done the case reviews are technically not urgent but important. So we've set an annual schedule so that we can always make sure we always do it at the beginning of the year for the last year, and then assuming that in the future we will have more resources on the personnel side, we're going to do them more often. But at least we're going to commit to do them once a year, and then always do one of these sessions where people can ask questions and where we can walk everybody through. We're going to have a very strong focus on quality data and on outcome data. So meaning we're going to let the quality data ideally speak for itself as much as possible. Quality data initially for now will mostly be CT scans, but we can discuss it a bit later. CT scans are not necessarily the only or even the in the long run, it's not sufficient to just do CT scans. You also need to do show ultrastructure preservation. So we're going to show you some CT scans later on, where on the CT scan level there is not much to improve anymore. Meaning we will now already start with new quality metrics to make sure that there is something to improve. We're not going to release any personal information or identifiable information, meaning names, age, all of that is not going to be released. In theory, if someone gives us full consent to do so, or comes up to us and says, "Hey, for me it's fine," then we're going to do it. But at least our standard procedure is to not do it. And once in a while, there's going to be preliminary reports. You're going to see one of those preliminary reports today. The reason for that is some procedures take a tremendous amount of time, especially immersion vitrifixation procedures, where you don't do perfusion due to a range where it's not really possible to do perfusion anymore. But since we don't like to do straight freezes, in those cases we do immersion vitrifixation, which takes many, many months. So if there's cases at the end of the year, then these reports will be preliminary reports at the beginning of the year, because just the procedure is not done yet. And we'll show you briefly one of those today. Now, 5 minutes about how we think about quality. So for us, first of all, preservation quality for me is really the most, and for us, it's really the most important thing, right? I want to be preserved with the best possible preservation quality in the future. So this will always be the highest guiding principle. If there's doubt in case of doubt, let's say there's, for example, 2 preservation techniques. One leads to better structural preservation while not having good viability, or at least theoretical viability in a lab. And also, on the other hand, there might be something that has, it at least in the lab conditions, has good viability, but has more problems with structural preservation. If there's ever doubt, we would always go first for structural preservation and then for viability second. If there's questions about that, feel free to ask a question why this is and how we do this. But that's kind of how we're deciding here. Then all of our reports have a list at the end where it says, okay, these things didn't go well, or we found something that might be better. This is how we're going to improve next time. So, and these things are going to be highly prioritized. So always going from very much high impact things to then lower impact things. So I think from an improvement standpoint, it's not good to tackle everything at the same time and hope that you're going to be perfect in one step. It's more so that we're going to be in every case and everything we do, we're going to tightly think about and like make a comprehensive plan of what is the highest impact to improve quality, and then do this with rigorous prioritization first, and then go for that. As I said already, currently the main quality metric is CT scan. New metrics here already in development, due to the fact that you will see our 2 last cases where the CT scan, there's basically nothing to improve anymore. The CT scan metric basically shows you, is the cryoprotective agent concentration in the brain high enough to cool down, to preserve, without ice crystal formation. But showing that there's no ice crystal formation does not mean that there's good ultrastructure preservation. It's a prerequisite for good ultrastructure preservation, but it's not enough of a criteria, right? You can have good perfusion, or at least you can have, maybe not good perfusion, but you can have at least cryoprotective agent everywhere in the brain while not having good ultrastructure preservation. So the next metric that we're going to currently working on, of course, it's not a secret. It's going to be some electron microscopy approach where we're both going to look at ultrastructure preservation after cryopreservation. And then one important concept here. So in the past, sometimes it was, I think, for cryopreservation cases pretty easy to say, well, this was out of our realm of responsibility, right? Out of the realm of our control. Examples being, for example, let's say, a patient didn't contact you that they had some terminal disease, right? And they've been a member for a long time, and then they contact you on the day of where, on the day of where they die, right? Or even worse, they contact you, the family contacts you once this patient has already died, right? So technically you could say here, well, this is out of our control, right? This didn't tell us, right? What can we do? Now, we see this slightly different, or we want to take this slightly different, this approach to responsibility. So on a high level, we consider everything within our realm of responsibility. And then now if you want to go a bit into detail, there's 2 categories of responsibility. There's direct responsibility, where we do full responsibility, and then there's indirect responsibility. And the difference here is, so direct responsibility would be stuff like, someone tells us they have, or a family member tells us someone has just died, and no one is on, we don't pick up the phone, right? Or we forget to take something to a case. Or, I don't know, something goes wrong that we should have trained, right? Or whatever, surgery doesn't go well. These types of things, of course, are all direct responsibility. Now, indirect responsibility, where we still consider it's within our realm of responsibility, is stuff like, someone has been a member with us for a very long time. then they get sick, but they don't contact us. And then the next of kin contacts us a day before they die that, this person has now died or is about to die. Now, of course, we would rush as quick as possible to that case, but depending on distance, we might arrive way too late, right? And then the cryopreservation case quality would not be great. We still consider that our responsibility in regards to, well, we could have told this member more times in the past that they need to contact us, right? So it's technically, of course, there's nothing that we can change anymore when it happens, but we should have done something before, right? Better information, I don't know, like smart rings for tracking of pulse, and then an app and so on, what we're building. So long story short, we're considering everything our responsibility, some direct, some indirect. If there's something going wrong where something goes wrong because of indirect responsibility, we're still going to try to fix it by, telling people earlier that they really need to contact us and they need to make sure that this is being done. Okay, now we're going into case reports. Now, I'm switching over to the first report. So this was a case, and here we might go a bit quick to be able to, first of all, all of you can read this to then have enough time to talk about these, talk about your questions later. So this case basically was one of the cases where we will in the future take indirect responsibility, right? So unfortunately, there was a couple of things. Like this person, as you can see here, died of a stroke, if I'm not mistaken, at least a big area of the brain due to a pre-mortem condition, was not well perfused. In general, there was a good amount of delay, around 13 hours. Also partially due to the hospital that we arrived at not being able to release the patient until the morning. So patient died in the evening. The hospital, the pathology department in that case, is the organization that hands out the bodies, so we could not get hold of the body until the early morning. Now, of course, we might say this is out of our responsibility, and in theory it is, but indirectly, at least down the line, if in the future we know that certain hospitals have problems there, we can strongly advise to have the patient relocated to another hospital and then be able to take over there. So currently, we know some hospitals, but we don't have a huge network there yet, so will not be always possible. But again, it's still something where we can do something about it, right? From a preservation standpoint, you see the data here. It's definitely not the whole brain is not perfectly perfused. Definitely you see it, or even well perfused. There is cryoprotective agent has arrived in the brain. So comparing that to the alternative of doing a straight freeze, it still probably made sense to do perfusion, even though perfusion quality, or at least is at least not where we want it to be. Right, and you can look at these reports, and of course, you see them, you can download them. Actually, there will be an updated version coming out soon with a bit more information, and from a mitigation standpoint, you also see a lot of things that, of course, need to be improved, but that's fine. You're always going to see a long list here. So the list, the amount of mitigation steps will not usually correlate with quality. Like there might be a lot of things where we want to improve small things, and even though the quality is pretty good. Right, then next case, again, this is a very preliminary case, so this will be very short. This is an immersion vitrifixation case. So the fixation has been done, and now currently the immersion vitrification is being done. And as you can see here, different perfusion, different cryoprotective agents are being diffused, and the final concentration is still ongoing. You see here the graph of concentration going up. So we do regular CT scans and then check how well the diffusion has already gone. And as you can see here, this is going up, but it's not where we want it to be yet. So there's gonna be I don't know, maybe it's done by now. We're going to do the next CT scan next week, and then we'll see how we go from there. Once that is, of course, done, you're going to have the CT scans with the final concentration, whatever was reached, as well. It's important to state here, in immersion vitrofixation cases, if you do the immersion long enough, the CT scan is going to look good, right? Because you just do the diffusion so long that no ice crystals can form anymore. But this, in this case, does not mean that the ultrastructure is also good, right? Because technically there could be cases where the brain was left at room temperature for 3 days, right, without doing anything. Then it was fixed, and then it was immersion vitrified, where now on a CT scan everything is going to look great, but on an ultrastructure, well, you had 3 days of warm ischemia, which definitely will not lead to good ultrastructure. So, meaning long-term CT scans alone don't tell the whole story. Currently, before we add new quality metrics, what you would need to look at, you would need to look at CT scan, looking at ice crystal formation, and at the same time you need to look at the amount of ischemia, and then kind of get a feeling for both of these things. Right. Now case number 3. I'm switching directly to and again, like if there's any questions about certain things here, let us know. Refractive index here, we reached terminal concentration of cryoprotective agents during perfusion. Everything else is relatively standard, and then perfusion went very well, meaning the CT scans look as good as they can be. There's 2 things to note here. One, in the middle of the brain here, you see an area that is not perfused. These are the so-called ventricles, which are fluid-filled areas of the brain. There's no brain tissue in there, so no gray matter, no white matter. So these areas do not need to be perfused. So all the relevant area that is gray and white matter is green. Green, in simple terms, means it's good, meaning no ice crystals can form in that area, at least no large ones. Yellow, medium to bad, definitely ice crystals can form. Red, bad. We've also released a technical document of how these CT scans and these calibration curves are done if someone wants to dig deep. And Rishi and others, we're currently building a new calibration curve that is an improved curve, which will be based on brain tissue. I don't know if there's anything else to say. Oh yeah, if you want to look at that in a quantitative method, then if you look at these 2 green lines here, the dark green line to the right of that's everything. Every pixel basically has that's a histogram of the pixels of the brain, the area that we marked in the slide before. So this area here where it contains the brain, meaning everything to the right of it has received enough cryoprotective agent to not have ice crystals form, assuming fast enough cooldown. And then there's a few more slices that basically show it's the same throughout the whole brain. These are all the ventricles, as I said, and then this where it looks a bit more, where it's not, it's a bit, I don't know, the resolution is slightly worse. These are CT artifacts from gold teeth. You see this in the small picture. I don't know if you can see it, if it's large enough, but you see this in the non-color coded one here. You see these lines here. These are CT artifacts that happen in CT if there's any metal. Same mitigation at the end. What we're gonna improve and so on next time. And then not only what was the issue, how problematic it was, or how problematic we rate it, but what has been done to improve it for the next cases, and is there more to be done? Right. Last but not least, case report number 4. Switching to the CT scans again. And by the way, there's going to be a new version of these reports. I think probably up today or tomorrow, with the concentrations of the medication and so on. So a bit more details here and there. If you go to the CT scans, maybe this one is the easiest to look at. Relatively similar story. the whole brain is well perfused. Here you have these two areas, the dural sinuses, which is also basically a vessel, and then the ventricles. Again, these two areas don't need to be perfused, and the rest looks good. There's some small areas here. They might be areas that are not well perfused. They might also be part of ventricles. It's very difficult to say, but they're very, very small compared to the overall volume. Again, if you look at the quantitative data again here, well perfused. We're not yet sure what the margin what the variance here is due to the CT scan, and also what slice you select. So the other one here was around 99%. This is 96 point something percent. But for argument's sake, most likely these cases are about the same. So there's very little. So I mean, technically it's like 3 point something percent difference, but I don't think this is a meaningful 3 point something percent, because it very much depends on how you select the slice. We always select a similar slice, but of course going one step, one slice difference in the CT scan might already remove some of these more yellowish areas, right? Just by chance, you don't cut maybe through a ventricle as much, and so on. So for argument's sake, we consider these cases to be of equal quality. And here you again see this is basically uniform throughout the whole brain, with again here being ventricles, and then everything that is not well perfused is also not part of the brain, or at least not of brain tissue. We will probably, or at least we will try to add another metric at some point down the line on the CT scan, where we would separate white and gray matter, because gray matter is the important stuff, whereas white matter is more, the connections of the brain in simple terms. It's a bit difficult to do, but hopefully we will be able to do this down the line. All right, now I think we would go through questions. Right. So I think we're going. I'll do one. Rishi does one.
Okay.
I don't know. Do you want to start?
Yeah, we can start. Okay. First one. Do you plan on supporting or helping local cryonics response groups, and how? Yes, always. We are always happy to help other local SST teams or standby teams around Europe, and now maybe also in the US as well. How? We would love to organize trainings for them. Also, we would love to build a network of SST teams around Europe who actually could be really helpful, because in cases of emergency cases where we can't reach somewhere on time, they could already start with SST procedures, and then we take over as we reach there. So trainings, in-house trainings, or sometimes we also do trainings during our conferences in October, and also having a database. So yeah.
Okay, I just saw this is 73 questions, so we need to go.
Okay.
We will go slightly fast, because otherwise we're going to be here for ages. And again, look through the questions. Look through if there's a question that is similar to the one that you have asked. Try to upvote it, and then we're going from the top to try to answer as many as possible. All right, next one is: will there be a public list of hospitals in Berlin, Germany, Berlin, that are not opposed to the idea of cryonics, or can you provide this information privately? So currently there is no list, right? And I think publicly would be difficult, because probably some hospitals in private would be open to it, but in public maybe not. In fact, we have already a couple of hospitals who are like that. If in private, so if someone says, hey, I might have a terminal disease, I might need to, I need to find a hospital, then of course in this case we absolutely would help with recommendations. So just reach out if that's the case. Fully public, I'm not sure if we can do that.
Okay. In the case of reports published so far, the shortest time between cardiopulmonary arrest and legal pronouncement of death was 3 hours. Can that be shortened? Yes, of course it can be shortened, but like Emil mentioned before, this is somewhat an indirect situation where we have no absolute control over this. So yes, if the medical team is really helpful, then yes, this can be shortened down to maybe even a few minutes, or even 1 minute. But this is not in our control.
It depends a bit on country as well. It depends a bit on country. In certain countries it can be shortened more, in others it can be shortened less. From a responsibility standpoint here, it kind of in combination to what the hospital question before that was, we would try to build networks of hospitals, even hospices, and if someone reaches out to us and if there is prior knowledge that someone might die soon, then maybe they can relocate to an area where we know that in this case there is more access if need be. But 3 hours, so the lucky thing is that at least from a perfusion standpoint and a CT-based standpoint, the 3 hours results are great. Like, so we don't necessarily, like, on a CT scan there is not much to be improved. In fact, we do a lot of things to improve, and this is the second thing, we do a lot of things to improve quality under non-ideal conditions, meaning basically when there is some amount of delay. All right. How do you specifically ensure immediate declaration of death and medical examiner sign off? So we cannot ensure that. We can just advocate for it. We can just, again, do our job, take responsibility, try to find a network of hospitals where we know that there is more openness, and so on. Medical examiner sign-off is not required in most cases. It is only required in unnatural death cases, which hopefully most cases are not, and statistically speaking there aren't. Because if a medical examiner needs to sign off, then there's always a bit of a delay. Normally, you would just need to wait until a standard doctor does the pronouncement. Yeah.
Okay. Can we visit the Tomorrow Bio facility north of Zurich? What is the protocol? So it's not a Tomorrow Bio facility, that's the European Biostasis Foundation, first of all. And currently, since we already have patients in long-term storage, it's not open for regular visits. We could maybe organize in such a way that you can come to the facility, but you can't visit the long-term storage room, which is the underground facility, or the medical rooms. But you're always welcome to visit us during one of our conferences, where the rest of the research lab is open, the offices are open, and you can
do trainings and so on.
Yeah.
Right. Do you plan to add more patient details such as age, nationality, sex, time of death, treatment delay, country, and cause of death? No, not anytime soon. Again, like if we get specific approval from the patient, we might, but for the time being, we try to stay away from anything that might be identifiable of who the patient was.
What are the criteria for on-site perfusion versus in-facility perfusion? Reports show 2 out of 3 perfusions were done in our facilities. Okay, so that totally depends on temperature, actually. So in cases where the patient is really far away from the facility and during the initial cool down, you already reach target temperature for starting surgery, then yes, we would start with the perfusion inside one of our ambulances. But in these cases, it was closer to the facility, and since the patients were already on the trajectory to reach target temperature for surgery, once we reached the facility, so as soon as we reached, they were already around the good temperatures, and we started surgery and perfusion at the facility.
Yeah. Next one will you be cooperating and working with Cryonics Institute and Alcor or operating alone as a competitor? So we're we're fundamentally very, very open to collaborate with anybody else in the space. Like this isn't really a field for competition. This is very much a field to do market development and kind of make this work together. So if there's points to collaborate on, we're more than happy to do so. So and in fact, we think there is a couple of topics that make total sense to collaborate on. And in fact, so a couple of them I've been discussing with leadership of the other organizations for a while now. Some of these things are not that easy, but we're very happy to to move fast and find partnerships there. So yeah, from our side, super openness. Not saying the other side is not open. Like they're also not against it or anything, as much as I know. Yeah.
How do you ensure that tomorrow is called early in case of approaching death? Will there be a new Android app replacing the current one? So there's 2 parts to it. One is obviously we stay in regular contact, and when the next of kin or the patient self contacts us with an information that yes, I might be going to cardiopulmonary arrest in the next few days. In those cases, we have our own dispatch protocol, and we decide when to dispatch. And the other is obviously the app, which is still under...
Yeah, so the app, unfortunately, the big problem with these apps, not only on Android, but also on iOS, is we need data from HealthKit or Google Fit. Problem is, both APIs are extremely locked down. Like if you want to access health data, both Apple and Google are extremely restrictive. So everything you do is annoying. You need to get extra approval. You need to get reapproved. I don't know. Everything is annoying. So building these apps, unfortunately, is very, very difficult. But we're going to restart that project. We already open sourced it and now are down to pay for some developers. So if anybody is an Android or iOS developer or a React Native developer, more than happy to join the open source project, and we're down to put some money towards that project to make it work. And in fact, since it's an open source project, it would then not be in the end an app that is just for our members, but everybody, all the other members could use it as well from other organizations. So yeah, it's definitely on the to-do list.
Did you observe tissue fractures in cryopreserved patients like Alcor has? So no.
Yeah, but to be fair, we haven't. Yeah. This is on the priority list. This was not on the top of the priority list yet. We're trying to be really, in quotation marks, radical there. To like tissue fractures. If you think about all the damage that there is, tissue fractures are probably not the most important ones. I know that there's a lot of discussion about it, and well, we implement ITS doers as well to not have less fracturing, right? Not necessarily zero, but significantly less. But from an overall priority standpoint, it's way more important to show that you get good structural preservation first, and then go for tissue fracturing second. So we have not focused too much on that yet. Of course, we do very slow cooldowns, so all the cooldowns are around 100 hours. But on the priority list, it's just not on the top of the priority as of yet. Is there a protocol for neurodegenerative patients? What happens if they die without memories? Will they be revived and given a new life? So in any neurodegenerative case, there is no specific protocol from our end. So in the end, we cannot do anything with memories or bring back memories or anything like that. So right, that would be up to neuroscience in the future, if possible. But on our side, it would just be preserve the brain, the brain how it is, as well as possible at that time. So there is not much that we can do in that regard from a preservation standpoint. I think if someone has neurodegenerative diseases, then it makes sense to reach out to us so that we know early. Of course, this is a disease where people are aware of the diagnosis, usually very early on, but otherwise there is no specific protocol.
Can payment for SST, standby by Tomorrow Biostasis, and storage at Cryonics Institute be combined in one life insurance?
Yeah, in theory it can. It's a bit so. There are a couple of life insurances that where you can select two beneficiaries, where it says, okay, Tomorrow gets that, CI gets that. In theory, that does work. If you are like if life insurance is still possible, right? Then you need to decide if you would rather have storage in Switzerland or at CI. One downside is if we just do SST and don't do long-term storage, we cannot do quality control, right? We cannot do CT scans, and so there's some, in quotation marks, downsides from an insurance standpoint. It probably does work. But it would need to be an individual discussion, so feel free to reach out. There's probably a way how to make that work. What's your annual membership growth rate so far? Growth rate, I don't exactly know. So we're currently adding somewhere between 10 and 20 members every month. So not saying we're happy with that, we would like to be much, much faster, but to my knowledge, compared to other organizations, that is already pretty fast. Like double, triple, I don't know how many times faster, but a relevant amount faster. The goal is, of course, to get faster, not as a thing in itself or as a value in itself, but once you have more members, you can have more teams, Once you have more teams, you can do faster standby. Once you have a lot more members, you can bring the cost down, which of course is very much one of our 3 main goals. Needs a good amount of members. It's not possible with like 300 more or something like that. But the goal is to go significantly faster in membership growth. Yeah.
All the CT scans presented are full body patients, correct? Are there not many brain only patients, or are there none at all right now? So if you look at the reports, the CT scans were done for full body patients, but the second case we had was actually a brain only case, and it's a vitreous fixation case. The CT scans related to that will be obviously updated the next round of reviews, since at this point it makes no sense to show any CT scans. So once the immersion fixation is completely finished, then we can show a CT scan with when it shows adequate.
Our membership is somewhere in the ballpark of 95% full body. So statistically speaking, there's going to be a tremendous amount of full body. In fact, we would always advocate for full body. Brain-only preservation from a brain banking perspective, or cryopreservation brain banking perspective, I think should be a consideration if it's too expensive to do whole body. Otherwise, we would always advocate for whole body. Yeah. Right. Right. I think the next question is, how can we prevent cryopreservation from being hindered by judicial action? Is there a solution to avoid the kidnapping, in quotation marks, of the deceased body by the judge? No, there is no way. If there's any, like let's say it's an unnatural death and there's an investigation to be done, you can advocate these things. So it's not true that there's nothing to be done. So there's something to be done in regards to advocating and asking and trying to ask if we can do a virtual autopsy and so on, if maybe we can take possession of the body quicker. But legally speaking, there's at least in every country, if push comes to shove, in every European country there's nothing to be done. It's possible that in some American states there's something to be done, but in Europe there's very little that can be done.
With reference to case reports 1, 3, and 4, can you unveil the European countries where the SST teams were deployed? So
no.
Previous easy answer is no.
But all within Europe. So I don't know, like within Europe, but far stretches of Europe. So from the very top to the very bottom, basically. Yeah.
In the 4 case reports, there's no reference to the S-mix metric, which you can find in the ALCO reports. Why?
Yeah, we're gonna like S-mix, like there's no real reason. You have the data to calculate the S-mix if you want. Again, priority list. We went for CT scans first, and CT scans, to be fair, and the data of how much ischemia there is kind of gives you information about S-mix. We just haven't added this yet. What we in fact will do, we will go for like long term. The goal would be to show CT scans and ultrastructure preservation. And then ultrastructure preservation, of course, if CT scans look good, then you would be able to look at ultrastructure preservation and see if the ultrastructure is also preserved well. There's a lot of technical questions around that, how to make that work and so on. And of course, it needs consent to take a small sample from the brain. These samples are extremely small, so they're being done in neurosurgery regularly. Meaning, as much as anybody understands, there's no impact to memory or like identity or anything like that. So that would be our primary goal. And until then, we might integrate S-mix, or probably will integrate S-mix as a metric here as well. Right, what is your stance on helium persuflation being pursued by Tanya Jones? Do you have plans to use helium in human cryopreservation in the future? So in general, any type of technical development, we're super supportive and happy, and if something new comes out that can be implemented into day-to-day practice, we're definitely taking a look at and will integrate if it makes sense. But helium persuflation is not there yet. So it's not something there yet where you could say, okay, tomorrow we have a case, how can we implement that into the next case? So for now, this is on the list of things that are promising, but need to still make the last bit of can they be done and are they proven in day-to-day day-to-day practice. In a lab, might be great, but it's a slightly different situation if you do it in a real-world circumstance. Yeah.
How feasible is it to move patients in cryonic suspension in case they need to be relocated in the future due to natural disasters, war, climate change, etc.? So definitely not impossible. Logistically, it's very difficult to do that because you need to maintain temperature. And that's one of the R&D projects which we will be working on here at Tomorrow, which is using dry shippers, which is a form of dewars, large dewars, which there's no direct liquid nitrogen, but they exist in this form of suspension. And that's one of the projects we'll be working on.
Yeah, but it's not easee.
It's not
not easy. Yeah. So I think there's still 71 questions. So we're trying. Can you give an update about any financial solutions being looked at in order that patients could preserve their assets in the future? So this asset preservation part was indeed always a plan that we do have. So where you have your assets for your maintaining storage, and then if you say at the end of your life you would like to have other assets that might be returned to you in the future. So we're in progress of figuring that, or building a structure for that, probably a Liechtenstein-based trust or a Liechtenstein-based foundation, maybe also a Swiss foundation. There's nothing there yet, so it's not like a template, a boilerplate solution yet. But if this is if someone is interested, then feel free to reach out. We definitely have some hints and so on how to do that. Later on, the idea would be to have that as a thing that you can just join, in quotation marks, to have that done.
Why not collab with influencers to boost awareness and cut cost? A visit in RAPs providing engaging content and often promoting YouTubers. So yeah, we are always welcome to have people over to do some videos. For example, we I think a few months ago we had a video with Tom Scott, who's a famous YouTuber. And yeah, when someone's up for it, yes.
Super open to it, yeah. All right. If someone is in a hospice in another country, would you be able to bring the ambulance into the country along with the team? Yeah, absolutely. Depends a bit on the country, but in most countries it works. We might need to collaborate with funeral directors in that country for legal reasons, but that's not an issue. We've done that. So yeah, no problem.
What is your specific priority approach to rapid cooling of the head? So if you mean how do we do that? So usually we have something called an SCCD tubing, which is a tubing which goes around the body and actually circulates the cold water, the ice water mixture actually. And that SCCD tubing also has a part which attaches to a mask which goes onto the head, and also a neck ring and a nasal cannula. And this ensures that cold water is always flushing around on the skin of the head, base of the skull through the nasal cannula, and around the neck, where the large vessels are, so ensuring cooling of the head.
Right. To improve chronic's credibility, shouldn't a third party rate Alcor and TB cases? Use shared metrics like SMICs and CT scans. Will you propose this to Alcor? Yeah. So in general, absolutely. I think there should definitely be shared metrics. SMICs I think is good. CT scans are, I think, also absolutely necessary. Will we propose this to Alcor? I'm pretty sure Alcor is aware, and I don't know what their policy on case reports currently is. My goal later on would be to have standardized, like a couple of things that we would always do in every report that I think makes sense. So SMICs definitely makes sense. Second would be speed of cooling. You could technically also have that as SMICs calculated from two starting points. One would be from circulatory rest, and the other one would be from when you take over. And when you take over, the cooling rate, how fast you are in cooling, would be pretty much be SMICs, kind of. Then CT scans, and some metric of ultrastructure preservation. For argument's sake, without having that fully figured out, electron microscopy. And electron microscopy might not be possible in every case because you need a small sample, but these things are absolutely necessary. And then technically, if you have CT scans and ultrastructure, then probably the other ones are less important. But for now, I think everything should be done.
How well can you preserve a brain compared to the whole body? Will memories be lost? I believe in the future we'll be able to give a new body. When it comes to quality of cryopreservation, there's no difference between brain or whole body cryopreservation. The quality remains the same. Even the initial process of cryopreservation remains the same. It's only towards the end of the procedure the brain is removed and
to be fair, that's in our case. Like other organizations do this differently, but so I think I said it on multiple webinars already. So we perfuse always through the aorta, right? We always do the main big vessel. The reason for that is that the brain is supplied by 4 vessels, 2 vertebrals, in the back, 2 vertebrals in the back, and 2 carotid arteries in the front, right? And if you don't perfuse the aorta, you will need to either cannulate 4 times, which is very difficult to do, and time-consuming, yada yada, or if you only cannulate the carotids, then in certain cases, when the so-called circle of Willis, which is a circle of vessels in the brain, if this in old people, it has like it can be incompetent, it can be like partially occluded, right? Some people have, I don't know if they know the percentages, but like 30% or so of people have like variations where it's not fully connected and stuff like that, right? So and in these cases, if you only do carotid perfusion, you run the risk of not being able to perfuse certain parts of the brain. That's why we always do through the heart. Then you reach everything. And then just in the end, either the brain is stored or the whole body is stored. But there's no difference in these two. Yeah. Right. Where were we? Okay. What does your team look like? How many are actually on payroll, and how many are interns? We're always around 10 to 12 people, out of which usually I think like 2 or so are usually interns, and the rest is on payroll, like in that ballpark. It fluctuates a bit depending on how many interns we have right now and how we structure the team, but in that ballpark. All right.
Okay.
I see a question. In case report number 4, you write the development of additional quality metrics is underway. Are you talking about the SMIX? No, SMIX is already a developed metric. No, I mean ultrastructure. A metric, there needs to be, in cryonics cases, there needs to be a metric for ultrastructure. Because, again, CT scans are great, but it doesn't tell you how the ultrastructure looks. And the structure is what is important. So there should be, if not in all, in a good amount, as high as possible, there should be a metric for ultrastructure. And to be fair, let me be more precise. There should be a metric, or a metric for ultrastructure becomes important once the CT scans are good. When the CT scans, we're not even, in quotation marks, not even the CT scans are good, then you don't need the ultrastructure preservation metric yet, right? Because then there's so much damage due to ice crystal formation or like other perfusion impairment, whatever else you have, that the ultrastructure doesn't become relevant yet. But once the CT scans are good, and you can say basically on the CT scans we can't really improve much anymore. This is why we said it in case report 4, right? Because now in case report 4 we knew we had 2 cases, the last 2 that we did, where on the CT scan there's not much for us to improve anymore, or at all anything to improve anymore. So now we need a new quality metric to go from there, right? And of course we could say, well, now we're trying to optimize the S-mix down, but the S-mix is a calculatory metric, which is great, and fine, but rather we would like to have like a quotation marks, a real biological metric that shows like, you know, the situation, like ultrastructure preservation in electron microscopy. Yeah.
Thanks for the interesting reports. The only thing I missed was a timing table. Are there plans? Is there a reason those are missing? So in the update, tonight, yeah, in the update,
tomorrow maybe.
Yeah, in the update towards the end of the report, there will be a timeline of everything that happened during the case as well.
All right. How can euthanasia be compatible with cryonics if the lethal substance used can damage organs and invalidate cryopreservation? So it's not that much of a problem. So that substance does not do much.
Usually it's just respiratory depression substances which are used, and if you act right after respiratory depression, then it's completely fine.
Yeah, and to be fair, compatible or combined, these two things cannot be combined. Like we are never involved in any euthanasia procedure. So if people want to choose that, that's up to them. They can, you know, that's not it has nothing to do, or like we're not involved in that procedure at all. And once legal pronouncement has been done, then of course we can start the cryopreservation procedure. But really combining these two things for legal and moral reasons we don't want to do. Yeah.
Are you testing cryopreservation on plants, animals? If so, are you testing reanimation already? No, the simple answer is no. But we do work with sometimes like animal organs to test one perfusion as well as test quality of perfusion.
There's some early research we fund that is there for rewarming, to test rewarming, which of course would be the first step for revival, like large-scale revival technology. Some of you might seen that stuff being presented at one of our conferences. So there's some stuff that we're doing, but full-on reanimation. Again, priority list, right? Priority list, like we're not necessarily there yet, where this can reasonably. There's too many problems like that, lower-hanging fruits that need to be solved first. What will happen if a person without a contract will call you in an emergency? So first of all, we would strongly suggest everybody who's in that call, who apparently has enough of an interest to spend an evening on very technical cryopreservation contracts, to reach out tomorrow and sign a contract. Because if that happens, you can still get cryopreserved. But usually, statistically speaking, it doesn't happen. Something goes wrong, it's not fast enough, I don't know. And it's very difficult. So if someone contacts us and says, hey, I don't know, terminal disease and so on, they can still sign up, right? They can sign up last minute. The cost will be a bit higher, so there's a premium that needs to be paid if you sign up if you already know that you have a terminal condition. But in theory, it's still possible, but definitely do not rely on that, if at all possible. And if that is the question where it's about like a specific, thing where someone might actually have a terminal condition and would need to contact us, then contact us right away. Like time is really of the essence here. We need a bit of time, and usually not we, but usually other sides needs a bit of time. There's funds need to be provided, contracts need to be signed, so this takes time. So don't rely on it, and if it happens, reach out at the first possible point in time.
Okay. Can non-Swiss make use of assisted suicide in Switzerland? So as far as I understand, yes, but it's a much more complex procedure if you're especially non-Swiss to get approval. But like Emil previously said,
it is possible. Yeah. So there's a couple of countries where so assisted suicide laws in around the world are very. There's like certain countries do this, others do that, and so on. So there's basically a plethora of different legal situations. Some countries allow assisted suicide without being a citizen or even without being a resident there. Switzerland being one of them. And then other countries in Europe, but this changes constantly because the legal system becomes more and more liberal in that regard constantly, which is arguably, if people want to do that, at least we support that decision if someone wants to make the decision for themselves, at least on a moral standpoint. All right, besides the first 4 cases last year, how many new cases do you already have in 2024, please? It's still a very small amount. There's one additional one so far. So, like statistically speaking, based on how our age structure of our members is, we did not in fact expect any cases. Like statistically, we are currently supposed to have somewhere in the ballpark of 0.6 cases per year. So we already had a significantly more cases than we planned for. Like some people who transferred to us, some people who signed up last minute, and so on and so on. So we don't really know how many cases we're going to have this year. It might be between 2 and 8, or maybe even more. Variance is probably very high, but we already last year, as I said, we had significantly more than we thought.
Okay. All the seat, that's already done. Can we find a solution to the delay in certifying legal debt during weekends that doesn't involve postponing chronic treatment for 72 hours? Okay, that obviously depends on the country, the state, and we have no direct control over this, but... So I think that the closest that you can get is having partnerships with hospitals, not really in regards to that the whole hospital knows you, but that you know certain doctors who are there, like higher up doctors who are supportive and who you can then transfer the patient to.
not you, but the patient themselves can request a transfer. There's technically the opportunity to collaborate with hospices and then again advocate for weekend. There's stuff that can be done, and partially we're doing that, but this is not going to be a quick solution. This is all going to be like advocating for stuff, finding people who are open to it, and so on. This is not going to be super easy. What is your favorite fictional representation of biostasis? A very good question. I don't know if there's any. I feel like most movies that I remember always, it's like a. I mean, probably some movie. Nothing comes to mind, but where it's just being used to travel to a faraway star. But usually these movies don't go out. I don't know. Usually the characters don't come out of the movie. I'm not sure if there's anything where it's like A to Z positive. At least nothing comes to mind. I don't know if you remember one.
You did post once an ad, I remember. That was the closest thing I've seen, but no, I don't know. Movie-wise, no, I can't think of it. Any plans for neural biopsies after vitrification for electron microscopy as was done for Stephen Coles? When do you anticipate offering ITS? So for the first part of the question, yes. That would be the way to go forward for doing electron microscopy for our new metric. And the second part, we are in collaboration projects, and we will be hopefully soon, not very soon.
Fingers still crossed for this year.
Yep.
Like so, towards the end of this year, fingers crossed. Maybe next year, but not far away. And it's going to be whole body ITS in this case. Of course, it can also do brains, but it's a whole body ITS tour, which I think currently, to my knowledge, does not exist. So end of the year. If you have wealth, stocks, real estate to pay for preservation if you sold it, but no life insurance or cash, is there an option for a contract bearer's guarantor? In theory, yes. So we have what we call alternative funding methods, where it can be a very diverse set of funding methods. But all of that would need to be discussed individually. So reach out if this is something that you want to do. We don't want to, we technically don't advise to do that. It's possible, but we had cases in the past where someone tried something like that. It didn't work. So again, from taking responsibility standpoint, we advise against it, strongly even. But in certain circumstances, you can set it up well. It just takes a bit of work. So feel free to reach out.
How can it be that when I would die and would be resuscitated after 10 to 15 minutes, revival is not possible, but in the CT, it's quite perfect after 3 hours? So in most cases, revival after CPR, in most hospitals follow this 30-minute rule, if I'm right. And the reason that you can't be revived is not that you can't be revived or resuscitated. You could be, but you would come back with a lot of issues. And in these 30 minutes or 3 hours, even 3 hours, there's not much degradation of vessels happening. So as long as there's no degradation of vessels happening, you'll have perfect perfusion. When you keep perfusing, and in our case, in 3 hours, the vessels are still good. You can perfuse the tissue pretty well. And there's some amount of
swelling from ischemia, but again, we're doing a couple of things to mitigate that. So all in all, you can still do it after that trial, but on ultrastructure would need to be checked separately. Can you offer affordable whole body preservation prices in Europe, similar to Cryonics Institute, for friends who cannot afford the high price? No. So there's two reasons why the prices at CI are different, right? Like one is not having SST included, right? If you include SST, then you kind of are in the ballpark of 100K at CI, for argument's sake. Might be a bit lower, might be a bit higher, depending on where you are. At least if you want good SST. So we reserve for every case, we reserve 80,000 SST cost, right? And cooldown cost and so on. So all the, mostly SST though. So 70 SST. And the other big reason is that for every patient, we put 120,000 euros onto the patient care trust, right? So on average, like assuming investment can be maintained, right? For every patient has 120,000 euros on the side for the future. If I'm not mistaken, CI has somewhere between I think 25, but I might be mistaken. Might be 30, might be somewhere in that ballpark. I don't know the exact number. So, but however you phrase it, it's less. The reason to put more money aside has two advantages in our mind. So one would be to say, okay, well, even if there are times where you have long-term low returns, you have an easier time of having the money return, like having an annual return or interest high enough while maintaining low-risk investments to maintain the annual cost. And the second point, of course, is someone needs to pay for revival in the future, right? And now, assuming that there's not going to be a post-scarcity society, which might be possible, but better safe than sorry, then in this case you have 120,000 euros for revival. If someone doesn't have the money for whole body, then one of the reasons then we would suggest brain, or like a combination, which again we're all open for. Feel free to reach out.
Is it true that you're working on an intermediate temperature cryostat, less than the temperature of liquid nitrogen, to lessen fracturing crystallization? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Something.
Okay. Should I get on hunger strike a few days before death to make the process of cryopreservation easier? So we would never advise anything in that direction. No. No, you should not. Like there's some like in certain neurodegenerative diseases, then there can be exceptions, but this would always need to be something that you would need to discuss with your attending doctor or decide for yourselves. We cannot and don't want to advise in any regard in that way.
There were cases where family members of the future cryopreserved person didn't collaborate and the chronic opportunity was lost. Do you propose any solution? Sign up early.
Have a last will.
Have a last will.
Yeah. Tell us.
Yes.
So again, like there's a lot of things that you can do, right? So like we have a structure where we can be the policy holder of your insurance policy, meaning that the family, if they try to get the money from the insurance, they cannot because they don't have a policy, or like the patient doesn't have a policy at that time. We have a policy, so it makes it significantly harder. Last will, having all your documents in order, and so on and so on. If this is the case, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to discuss all the details of how to do that and how to mitigate the risk there. We are proposing a standard format for case reports. If this was the norm for a chronics organization, it would allow for easy comparison of results? Sure, I mean we're open to that. If all the others are joining, then we're definitely joining. Yeah.
Where can I find the 4 case reports? Obviously, some guests have read about them in advance. They're all on our website. Yeah, pretty easy to
find. Documents, and then there's case reports. Yeah, and read them tomorrow when the new versions are up. Yes. Yeah. No info in reports about most important steps in chronics, relatives, relationships, monitoring and autopsy, causing hours or days lost. Nothing to improve here. So relatives and all of that relationship. I mean, we could add like a small there was no problems with relatives again. Otherwise, we would because of the no personal information policy, we would not be able to release too much there. Autopsy, if an autopsy would be done, we would have that in reports, but this has not been the case.
Okay. Will PET cryopreservation cases also have case reports? Yeah.
Not for the time being. The reason is there's so many different PETs, right? So you would have like there would be so many different standards, right? Like for example, let's say like CT scans, like it's not an established procedure. Maybe down the line we're gonna add that at some point, but for now this would be too complex. At the same time, a lot of people for their pets, they don't have SST contracts, so these are going to be then last minute things or straight freezes or immersion vitrifications and so on. So the variance of pets is just so big from how much people are able to pay, how much they want to pay, what the actual pet is, and so on. That for now we've decided that this would be out of scope for now. But in the future we might change that. Yeah. How much of a fee is secured for reanimation and resettlement back into society? In our case, 120,000. Yeah.
What about inheritance laws? What laws or change in the law do you think are needed for cryonics in general? I think you should
Unclear. Probably inheritance law is not going to change. You just don't get back what was inherited by your next of kin, 100 years ago. So that's just gone. What other laws need to change? I don't think anything fundamentally needs to change. It would just need to be, how do you declare, from an administration standpoint, how do you give a person a new passport, and how do you need to put them back into the registry of citizens? But laws, I don't think anything would need to fundamentally change. Again, this might very well depend on countries, but I'm not aware of any specific law that would forbid that. In countries where medical aid in dying is permitted, right? Do you link to the respective organizations to help in optimal preservation? No, we don't link to that. Again, this is a process that we cannot and don't want to be involved in at all. It can be done sequentially. So if you reach out to us and say, I'm doing this, and can you do cryopreservation after, then yes, we can do cryopreservation after. But basically, it's first the process of assisted dying, and then we would take over a second after, or as much as law allows. But we cannot be involved in that process.
Investments for maintenance and revival be changed if income they generate is insufficient due to unexpected black swan changes in world financial economics.
Yeah, so we put a significantly, that's one of the reasons why we put so much more money aside, to be able to stay with very low risk investments, and if push comes to shove, have a lot of backup to still maintain cryostasis without anything going wrong. Really, really big black swan events just haven't happened in the last decades. To be safe and rather safe than sorry. This is one of the reasons why we want significantly more money. New Tomorrow Bio app we released. There's no specific date. It's getting higher on the to-do list, so we want to do it. We want to do it soon, but there's no specific date. I want to appreciate that you added issue mitigation section. This is exactly what I expect to see in a report, and nobody did it before on a regular basis. I think this makes a lot of sense to say, okay, we saw these problems, this is what we did about them, and then, call us out if you see a problem again, right? Ideally, there will be new problems, there will be new improvements to be made. But ideally, something that was a problem in the past should not come up. You can never avoid it, of course. There's going to be something's going to go wrong again, that already went wrong in the past. This, unfortunately, just is the case if you kind of deal with emergency medicine. But this should not happen often. This should not be okay, it's the same list again next time, right? So if you see that, send us an email. This should not happen.
Why not use the full body heart perfusion method and then preserve only the head to get the best of both worlds? So that's exactly what we do, except that we don't do cephalic preservation, we do only brain only. So we perfuse the aorta, both in case of whole body and brain only preservation. And in case of brain only, post completion of perfusion, you extract the brain.
Yeah. And the reason for that is that we can offer brain even cheaper than we would be able to offer cephalic. And then a lot of legal problems that happened in the past happened because of cephalic, whereas brain biobanking is a very common, totally accepted thing. And we offer brain not because we would say, hey, this is great. We offer it because it's more affordable. So initially, we started out only doing whole body. Whole body was our main core procedure initially. We added brain later, because we wanted to offer something that is more affordable. But advocation-wise, we would always suggest go for whole body. Are you lobbying any governments to recognize cryonics officially? No, we're not. Not only because there is nothing to be improved. So in most countries, cryonics is fine, legally, factually, and so on. Everything else where we would like to improve something, you cannot improve it just for cryonics. It would need to be then a blanket improvement that would impact a lot of other things as well, where it's unrealistic currently that this will happen. So specific laws for cryonics, there's, again, I'm speaking in general terms. There might be certain countries where there are problems, but by and large, in most countries, it is fine. Yeah.
If someone dies suddenly and no family members contact you afterwards, do you have a system in place to get informed? If not, will you implement such a system? So that's why you wear bracelets. That's why the app is also coming through. So the app will be able to track your pulse, and in case there is no pulse data, then we get an alert. And not just us, but also family members can get an alert to check up on you.
Yeah. What are costs of cryopreservation, and will they change in the future? If yes, estimate how much. So cost currently for whole body in our case is 200,000. If it's last minute, it goes a bit up, meaning if you already have a terminal disease, then the cost is a bit higher. Otherwise, if you sign up now, 200. For brain only, including SST, it's 75. The goal would be to bring them down tremendously. Like, this is not going to be a fast thing, but we would like to bring them down like a lot. Luckily, everything in chronics scales well with size. So but you need to go significantly bigger. That's why we focus so much on, okay, how can we inform more members and find more members and offer the opportunity and have them then make the decision, because it would be able to bring costs down significantly. By the way, looking at time, go through the questions, because there's still 47 questions left, and I think we need to dip out in the next couple of minutes, like around half past. So first of all, if there's any questions that you definitely want answered, go through them and upvote them. I think we can make a cutoff at every question that has at least 2 upvotes. We can answer. And then if now in a second every question has 2 upvotes, then we might need to change that policy. And if that's the case, then feel free to just reach out by email, send us an email, and we might also do this webinar again to answer more questions, or just do a Q&A webinar for random Q&A. All right, Oregon Brain Preservation is the only one that allows deanimation in their facility. Since Switzerland allows euthanasia, could Tomorrow eventually do the same? Probably, this is a can of worms. Combining these two things, there's conflict of interest, there's legal problems, especially in Switzerland. So I don't think we're going to do this at any time soon. If at some point in the future the law changes, then we might be open to it, of course. But for the time being, there's no plans. But since our ambulances are anyway equipped, like our standard procedure is in the ambulance, right? So most of the training we do is doing the procedures in the ambulance, meaning there is no relevant difference. I'm not aware of any difference where we would say we're more ready to do a case at a facility as opposed to in an ambulance. This is what we train 85% of the time. Yeah.
How do you ensure the brain isn't damaged or exposed to additional warm ischemic time during removal? So during the removal, you're still under at least some level of perfusion, so that there's still the cold perfusate running through the vessels during the removal of the brain, and then post extraction of the brain, and then the vessels get cut, and then it's really quick. So it's not much warm ischemia time during extraction.
Yeah. Also, even if you can cool externally a bit. Also, brain extraction doesn't take that long. And again, from a priority list, the amount of cold ischemia, because it's not warm ischemia at that time, right? You would do the brain extraction after perfusion. So at that point, you would already be in cold ischemia territory. So the amount of additional damage, ischemia during that time, compared to all the other things that we still need to improve, is negligible. Not saying it's not the thing, right? It should be improved, but just down the priority list. What happens if you go bankrupt? What happens to your patients? So the storage is always with a non-profit foundation, right? Which does everything to never be able to go bankrupt. So it doesn't have employees. It's super low cost. It keeps costs down, and so on and so on. Whereas Tomorrow, first of all, we also do everything to not go out of business, right? Due to money insolvent or whatever. Right, Fernando and we've run a lot of companies before, so I think we have a relatively good understanding of how to make sure that a company never runs out of money. But if that should ever happen, nothing happens to the patients. The patients are totally fine. It's fully independent, and would not be impacted at all.
Okay. Will you eventually have a mobile virtopsy unit, a big ambulance with virtual autopsy capabilities coming along with your SST ambulance?
Unlikely. I think unlikely. I mean, I'm not saying never. Eventually is a long time, but at least this is not something that we'll be able to do soon, right? The virtual autopsy means some kind of imaging, meaning CT scan or something, or MRI. Putting that into a car, now you're truck-sized, like like a 40-foot container-sized truck, which is for a long time probably not feasible. There might be smaller units, maybe, but it's not something that is soon. Is Tomorrow SST only plus long-term storage at Cryo Institute around 75,000 euros in total? Around that. So for SST only, we need a minimum of 50,000, and then whatever shipment is, but that would not be up to us. And then storage is like 30 or whatever, like somewhere in that ballpark. So it should be slightly higher than 75. 75 is brain in Switzerland, where we reserve 25 for the on-site procedure, meaning cooldown and cooldown and patient care trust, and the rest, the 50,000, is for SST.
Is full body preservation advisable for obese people, morbidly obese? Will they fit in the door or need to pay more for their own door? So there's no restriction as such for.
But at some point, they pay more.
At some point, yeah.
So there's like a kind of a grace. So basically, you would need to fit into 1/4 of a door, right? If you need more, then there might be some wiggle room, but by and large, at some point you would need to pay more. It's basically like storage is a function of size, so at some point it's more expensive. How does Tomorrow's VM1 formulation differ from CI's, and is it open source? So it's a range of things. So it's steps, it's buffer, it's concentration. It's soon going to be blood-brain barrier modifiers, at least for certain cases. These are the current things, and then there might more things might come. Is it open source? I don't know if we have it somewhere on the webpage, but if someone wants it, absolutely, sure. Like if any of the things that we've discussed, how we do things, right? If you want to set up your own organization or something like that, or build a local team, you name it, feel free to reach out. Oh yeah, and it's also different washout. It's MHP2 washout. Feel free to reach out. More than happy to share it. How long could a person last under these preservation techniques in the doer? For argument's sake, indefinitely. Like there is no real,
as long as the preservation conditions are maintained.
Yeah, doesn't matter. All right, last chance. Otherwise, we already went a bit over. I hope we were fast enough answering all questions. So if there's any last minute questions that urgently need to be answered, feel free to upvote them. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. If there's any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out at any point, just in person. If you're not signed up yet, as I said, most important thing to get good cryopreservation is sign up early, and then be an engaged member with the community, or at least with the provider. So definitely reach out if you're interested. More than happy to answer all your questions in that regard as well. And now, checking one last time. Okay, there's one question that made it. Is it stated somewhere when a patient should really be resuscitated, depending on the cause of death and the condition at the time of death? So there's basically three main factors until resuscitation should be attempted or should be done. One, of course, the underlying condition that led to the patient's death needs to be curable. The patient needs to have a relevant amount of remaining years of life left based on the new technology, right? Let's say someone is 85, right? Currently, you would not be able to bring them back or it doesn't make sense because the life expectancy is like 4 years or whatever, right? So you want to have let's say 30 years of remaining years of life left. And then last but not least, of course, the technology needs to exist to even bring someone back in principle. So these are the three main things that need to happen. And now patients or members who are signed up with us can provide wishes. What would they like to be? By and large, would they rather like to be early or would they like to be late? Which has upsides and downsides, even though I think both, it's not that much of an issue which way you want to go there. But you can provide wishes. Not legally binding though, for a variety of reasons. But that would be the oh god, now okay, really fast. Do you plan to offer members the options to preserve their DNA for future revival without memories? No. This is just a totally different thing. Like the value proposition is totally different, right? So there's other organizations that do that. We would not do that. How is the ITS DUA development going? It's going. It's a complex process. So it is progressing. I always like everything to progress faster. So fingers crossed. End of the year, I hope. Are you not concerned about the world growing population and the potential issues of overpopulation in the future? Not really, for two reasons. A, population is basically, I think every prediction currently has the world leveling out at around 13 billion. Then we need two more technologies to have significantly more people on the world. Vertical farming, which already pretty much exists, and the other one is fusion reactors, which, for the first time in many, many years, now might actually be the time when this is not just another 20 years ago in the future, right, where it actually comes about to be possible. So I think with these two technologies, and then of course maybe living on the stars and like at least Mars or whatever, right? We're talking about so long time horizons that at that time technology will probably exist to already have solved a lot of problems. It's a different discussion that we can have at some point, but happy to do it. All right. Why do you advise full body over brain only? There's a couple of reasons. So in anything in cryopreservation, I'd rather be safe than sorry, right? So do I believe that everything is important in the brain? Absolutely, I do. Am I 100% sure? No, because I don't want to, just from an epistemic standpoint. So there might be some revival techniques in the future where you would like to have the whole body, or where it's cheaper to have the whole body. So long story short, if you do the wrong decision here, if you go the wrong way, I don't think it's wrong, but there's only one time you can make that decision. So I would always advocate for that. But if someone says, I want to do brain only, then I wouldn't say, well, this is a bad decision. This is totally fine. But from an advocation standpoint, I would always go for whole body. Reports do not contain target optimal values. How do we know if work was done properly or not? Example, refractive index, cooling speed, it's all in there. Like refractive index, or you mean like targets for refractive index? No, the target for refractive index, you can look it up. This is a known value. Good point. We might poke it in. Cooling speed, there is no optimal. There's just as quick as possible. You see the end result, which is the CT scan. If the values would be really bad, then you wouldn't get good CT scans anymore. So the end result is there. Pressure is also not in there, you're right, can be in there, but it's also a known value. Should be somewhere between 80 and 110, 100. Yeah. I think now I can let everybody have a good night, including the team who graciously organized everything here and made sure that hopefully everything went well, which I don't know, but I assume. Now without further ado, thanks for joining again. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out. If you want to sign up, definitely feel free to reach out. And then talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.